Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Zimmer. I am a writing tutor with the Cincinnati State Writing Center, and I'm also an ESL instructor at Cincinnati State. Today's presentation is about how to cite sources, specifically how to cite sources in MLA format, and this is part 2. Part 2 covers in-text citations. These are the references to your sources that happen in your paper. If you want to know more about how to make a works cited page and about citations in general, you can go to the part 1 video. The link to that is going to be posted down below this video in the description. So check that out if you haven't already. Okay, today's topic, wow, it is going to be in-text citations. Here are the questions we'll be answering. First of all, just what are they? What are in-text citations? And when and how do we use them? And again, I want to point out that today we are focused on MLA format. I'm going to have another video explaining more about what MLA format is and how it works and all of that, but the short answer is that MLA is a group called the Modern Language Association, and they have certain rules for how things get formatted and shown in your documents. There are other groups with other kinds of rules, but for you, MLA is probably the only one you need to worry about right now. Okay, show us where you got it. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about outside sources. If you're writing an essay and you use outside material, you have to show that you got that material, and you have to show it in 2 different places. The first place is in your works cited page. Well, I don't know, first, second. The works cited page is at the end of your document. So the first place I'm going to mention here is that you need to show it in the works cited page. And again, you can watch the part 1 video to learn about how to make a works cited page. The second place is in the body of the essay. That is what today's video is about. Okay, so what do I need to cite? So remember that cite is a verb. Wow, my handwriting is getting so much better on this screen. Oh, beautiful. Okay, cite means reference. Right? When you make a reference or when you refer to a source outside of yourself, that is a citation. You're showing, let me see, show where you got info. This is just some review to see if you're paying attention. So what do you need to cite? I got a list for you right here, as a matter of fact. How about that? First of all, quotations. If you use somebody else's exact words in those little quotation marks, you need to cite it. You need to show where you got it. If you are paraphrasing, you need to show where you got it. Paraphrasing means you are using somebody else's ideas, but you're using your own words. And I'm going to have examples of all this stuff, so if you need a little clarification, just wait, and we will get to it. Also, I should add that with paraphrases, it's kind of related to summaries, right? Summarizing and paraphrasing are very similar. I'm thinking about the difference here. The difference really is that when you are paraphrasing, you are just kind of repeating somebody's ideas without using their exact words. But when you are summarizing, what you're doing is explaining, usually you're kind of like listing details or information. For example, if you are talking about research that some scientists did, and you are explaining what those scientists found out after they did their research, you would be summarizing their research. In other words, you're taking like a big piece of information, big complex piece of information like a scientific study, and you're kind of wrapping it up into a sentence or a couple short sentences, and that is a summary. You could also remember summarizing is like what you do if you retell a story. If you're writing an essay about a book or a short story, some kind of narrative, you don't have to write the whole story again, word for word, in your essay. You can summarize it. You can explain the events of the story in a few short phrases. That's summarizing. Okay, anyway, onward, onward, onward. The next thing you need to make sure you cite is if you have outside research that you're using, like I just mentioned. Let's say you're writing a report on climate change. I doubt you're an expert on climate change. If you're watching this and you are a climate change expert, thank you for your research. But for the rest of us who are not experts, we'd probably need to look at some work by other people to learn more about the matter of climate change. So that outside research, if we went and found data from other people, we would need to cite it. If there's an interview of some kind that you refer to in your essay, you need to cite that. Maybe you're writing something about a famous musician and you look up an interview with that musician on YouTube, or you look up any video featuring them talking about something and you want to use those words, you would need to cite that. You need to show where you got it. Finally, any images, graphs, diagrams, any visual information that you get from other places, you also need to cite that. Here's what you don't need to cite. You don't need to cite your own experience or ideas. If I describe a story from my life, I don't need to then put, that came from Daniel Zimmer 2020 or something like that. Not important. Common knowledge. So the idea of common knowledge is kind of a strange one. I refer to common knowledge as information that most people have access to. Sometimes I see people refer to common knowledge as things that most people know, but who are most people? That's kind of a strange idea, right? Most people in this culture, maybe, most people in this country, I don't know. There are things that most people in China know that most people in the US might not know. There are things that people in Mexico might know that people in Canada might not know, right? So most people is kind of it's not a very helpful phrase. So what I say is most of the people in your audience. Think about who you expect to read this paper and about what kind of background knowledge you would expect them to have about something. For example, most of us know that in the United States, in the summertime months, June, July, August, it's very hot, right? So you don't need to look that up and research it and say, the United States climate is often hotter in the summer months, and then have a source where it shows where you got that from. If you're writing for an American audience or people who speak English, they probably know about the weather in the United States. Another good example might be, I don't know, if you refer to the freezing point of water, right? We know the freezing point of water is 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. That's kind of common knowledge. That's something I think that most educated people understand and know. You don't have to look that up to prove it. I also recommend not quoting the dictionary. That was a weird way to say that. I don't recommend quoting the dictionary. All right. Anyway, let's get on to how you include citations in your essay body and what they look like. We have two types of citation. There are signal phrases and there are in-text citations. So I know that the title of this presentation has to do with in-text citations. If we get really specific, the in-text ones are just one type of citation. There are also signal phrases. Let's start with signal phrases. All right, what is it? A signal phrase happens when you mention the author or authors of a source in the sentence itself. Here's a good example. We start with the authors right here, Kirschner and Mandel. So let's read this. Kirschner and Mandel advise students to, now here's a quote, not quote extensively in a research paper. Numerous quotations interrupt the flow of your discussion and give readers the impression that your essay is just a collection of other people's ideas. So some important things to note. First of all, here are the authors. Most of the time, you can just write, hold on, as usual, I'm at an awkward angle here. Usually, if you're referring to authors, you can just use their last names. You know, maybe the first time that you mention them, you can use their first and last name, but the convention really is that we just refer to people by their last names in academic writing. The second thing I want to point out is, let me change colors here. It's right here. We have a verb. This is a very common structure. You have an author or authors plus some kind of verb. Maybe we could call it a reporting verb. That structure is very common. In other words, it's like using the word said, but we can use other actions too. They advise. What do they advise? They advise students not to quote too much in a research paper. That's also really good advice. Don't quote too much in a research paper. Summarize the ideas, paraphrase the ideas yourself. If you use too many quotes or your quotations are too long, then you're not really writing a paper, you're just repeating other people's information. The last thing is right here. We have the end quotation, there's the end quotation, and the parenthetical citation, the parentheses, showing the page number, like that. So when you have the authors' names in the sentence already, if you just mention the authors, you do not need them here. You do not need them in the parentheses. You only need the page number. That's the signal phrase. The signal phrase specifically, how did all those dots happen? I don't even know. Great job. You can tell I'm really on top of it today. The signal phrase is right here. Should have pointed that out at the beginning of the slide. All right. There's your signal phrase. Signal phrase means you've got the authors up front in the sentence. Then at the end, in these parentheses, you've got more information. By the way, you can find that on page 393. This works. Let's take a step back for a moment and think about why this works this way. Like, why is it set up this way? We start with the author's names because we know that on our works cited page, so here's my tiny works cited page with terrible handwriting, works cited, I know that I could jump over to the works cited page and find an entry that says Kirschner, Mansell, blah, 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 blah. I know that the first thing listed is going to be their last names. So it's called a signal because it's kind of a signal for the reader that says, hey, if you want to know more about this, look at my works cited page. If you go to my works cited page, you will see a listing that starts with these guys with their names. And that will tell you the source. And if you want to know more, you go to page 393 of that source. Okay. Once again, I was about to say any questions, but I remembered this is a recording. If you do have questions, you can leave them in the comments section for this video. I do look at those. I will respond to them. Okay. Here's the thing about signal phrases. Sometimes there's no page number. For example, if you're reading an article on the internet, sometimes those articles, if you didn't print them out, they don't have page numbers. Or, you know, if you print it on one printer, it might be 5 pages. If you print it on another, it could be 6. You just don't know. So no problem. If you mention the author in the signal phrase, but there is no page number, you do not need parentheses at the end of the citation. You just don't put a page number. So here's a good example. In his famous speech, The Other America, Martin Luther King contended that, quote, a riot is the language of the unheard. It's a famous line from Martin Luther King Jr. I have a signal phrase right here. I guess right here too. I got author, verb, he contended, he made an argument. And then I have the quotation right here. This is not a quote. That's just the name of the speech. So here's my question for you now. If you wanted to find the source for this quote on the works cited page, what would be the first thing you'd look for? Let me clarify. What would the works cited entry begin with? What word would it begin with on the works cited page? I'll give you 5 seconds in my head to think about it. Okay, time's up. The answer is you would look under King. You would see King on the works cited page. So if you don't know about this, watch the part 1 video because I explain it, but usually you have the author's first name, you have the author's last name first, and then you can have the first and middle name. So King, Martin Luther, and then actually he's a junior, so you would have another comma, and then Jr. period. So on the works cited page, you would jump to King, and after that name, you'd have all the information about where I found that speech. Pretty cool. Okay, that's signal phrases. Now let's talk about in-text citations, also known as parenthetical. It's a fun word to say, parenthetical. Parenthetical citations. Okay. Parenthetical citations come at the end of a sentence, usually. They're in the body of the paragraph. So I chose this you are here sign because I think of these parenthetical citations as like they're kind of like points on a map. I think about maps a lot when I think about the writing process. It's an analogy I use a lot. I use it in some other videos to describe other things with writing, but parenthetical citations kind of show you where things are. They show you where you got things. Let's take a closer look. Usually, not always, the parenthetical citations include the author's last name and a page number with no punctuation between them. For example, if you read something that I wrote, my last name is Zimmer. Let's say you quoted me on page 25. It would look like that. And then there would be a period. The period is coming at the end of this, whatever sentence came before this citation. Okay, let's look at another example. In a paraphrase, you use your own words to give an accurate, detailed account of what is stated in your source. Kirshner and Mandel, 391. So this is just some information about what paraphrasing is, but that information came not from me, but from Kirshner and Mandel from their book, specifically on page 391. So I know I'm repeating myself here, but I really want you to understand this. this citation tells me what entry to look at on the Works Cited page. It says, hey, if you want to know more about where I got this, go to the Works Cited page, look for Kirshner and Mandel, and you will see what book it came from, you'll see when it was published, all that good stuff. But again, author names, page number, no punctuation. Okay, what if there's no author? Should you hit the panic button? Don't panic, it's okay. Couple options here. You could use the complete article or web page title in the signal phrase, or you could use a shortened form of the title of your source in parentheses. Here's an example. According to Facts About Sugar on WebMD, kids see about 4,000 ads per year encouraging them to eat unhealthy food and drinks. So I don't have an author, I just have an article title right here. Remember, article titles go in quotation marks. That's something else in the part 1 video we talk about. What should you put in quotation marks and what should you italicize? We italicize WebMD because that is the container. That's the website where this information was published. And then all of this, from kids see 4,000 ads, etc., all that information, that is a great example of paraphrasing. If I look at the article from WebMD, it maybe does not say those words exactly, but it will share the same information, it will share the same idea. All right, that's, what do we call this when we have the source up front, the author or the source up front? What's that called? Pop quiz, see if you remember. It's called the signal phrase. Signal PH for phrase. So again, if you don't have an author, just use the title of the article in the signal phrase. Another thing is you could use a shorter form of the title in your parenthetical citation. So here's another paraphrase of this information written a little bit differently. As a result, kids see about 4,000 ads per year encouraging them to eat unhealthy food and drinks. And I just have quotation facts. That's just the short version of the title. Why do we do it that way? We do it that way because when there's no author, then the first thing you will list in the Works Cited entry is the title of the source. So remember, these parenthetical citations are supposed to help the reader find the information on the Works Cited page. We are saying, hey, go to the Works Cited page, look for the thing that starts with the word facts. You'll see the full title there. You'll see where it was published, etc. All right. What if there are 2 or more authors? We got 2 Spider-Mans, right? 2 Spider-Men? I don't know. 2 or more authors. If there are 2 authors, just use their last names together, okay? According to a nationwide poll, 75% of Americans are opposed to laws that restrict or put limitations on access to unhealthy food. Oh, that's interesting. All right, according to Nergard and I don't know if that's Agista or what, but there's 2 of them. They both worked on this. We put them together with the word and. If you have 3 or more authors, no big deal. You use this et al. Something I talk about in the other video. Et al. Means and others. It's Latin. I think this all is short for something, but I don't know. Go ask your Latin teacher, assuming you have one. But yeah, you're going to use et al. You're going to use the first author's name. That's the last name. Sorry, I'm getting confusing there. You use the lead author's last name, and then you have et al. To represent everybody else. And again, this is a paraphrase, right? This is not a quote. Don't use quotes too much. You should really only use quotes if there's something about the person's exact words that's really special or important or unique. Um, special and unique kind of mean the same thing, don't they? But if there's no way for you to phrase it in your own words without losing something from the original, then sure, just quote it, because there's a special way that that author is putting something that you want to quote. Like Martin Luther King's example earlier, a riot is the language of the unheard. Um, right? I could paraphrase that and say, Martin Luther King argues that riots are a way for people who do not normally get to participate in certain aspects of society to make their frustration and anger known to the bigger world. Okay, that's a paraphrase of that, but that does not capture the same feeling of the original quote, which is very short and direct and elegant. Okay, so don't overquote, paraphrase. Anyway, get off my paraphrasing soapbox here. Only after results were reviewed by an independent panel did the researchers publish their findings. All right, so they're just kind of summarizing some information about some study, and we see that it comes from Blaine et al. Okay. What if you have an organization as the author? What if it's not a person, but an organization like the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, or a company like Procter and Gamble, right? What if they release some publication that you're quoting or some press release? Just use the organization's name in the signal phrase or use it in parentheses. For example, the cost of diagnosed diabetes in the United States in 2012 was estimated at $245 billion. Wow, that's a lot of money. And that came from the American Diabetes Association. And it's okay to abbreviate words like association, ASSN, or organization. Could be org. What is going on? ORG. My computer's acting up. Just trying to write org there. You can use org for organization. You could use co for company, and so on. All right. Here's another example. According to the American Automobile Association, AAA, teen drivers are 66% more likely to be in a car crash than adult drivers. Okay, so let's go back to the first example for a moment. Here's a parenthetical citation at the end. Now, we don't know the page number, probably because there is no page number. We don't know the author. We don't know the title of the report necessarily. We're just using the association name instead of an author. Here we have a signal phrase in the second one, American Automobile Association. I think my pen battery is running low. All right. We have the AAA mentioned in the signal phrase, and then there's a page number at the end. All right. Sometimes, this one you're not going to use too often probably, but this came up for me when I was working on my master's degree, my thesis. A thesis is like a big, huge research project you have to do to finish your master's degree. And when I was working on that, sometimes I had information from one source that was actually quoting a different source. That's called an indirect source. When a writer's or speaker's quoted words appear in a source written by someone else, begin the in-text citation with the abbreviation quoted in. So look at the example. Public health researcher Dan Smith has said that, quote, public health practices are communal in nature and concerned with the well-being of the community as a whole and not just the well-being of any particular person. So look, I have a signal phrase here, Dan Smith. I have an author and I have a verb, he has said, and then I have a quotation from Dan Smith. But what if I did not get that quote directly from Dan Smith? I got it from somebody else who was quoting Dan Smith, and that's right here at the end, quoted in Gostin and Gostin. I guess there were two Gostins, and they worked together and they wrote something where they quoted Dan Smith. So I'm quoting them, quoting him. You're not going to see that super often in your work, probably, just based on your current situation as a student in a English comp class, but it's possible you might see it. Okay, so that's more or less parenthetical citations and signal phrases. If you have questions, leave a note in the comments section with your question. I like being able to answer people's questions there because sometimes people have the same question and they can see my answer to everything in the comments. And lastly, here's my Works Cited page. Right here are the sources that I consulted for some of the material in this essay, or not essay, in this presentation. So take a look at that. It is beautiful. All right, more presentations are on the way on other topics. If you have a certain writing related topic that you would like to see a presentation on, or if you have questions about something, again, leave a message in the comments. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you later.